I'm very guilty of not having introduced Tanya to the Assembly formally. Tanya is the newly appointed City Deal Director. She wrote, I think, to members of the Assembly, and I really should have done that. I told you all about the people who weren't here and weren't going to be here, but I forgot to tell you about the new person who would be here. So welcome, Tanya. Just to return to the order then, we go now to item 6C, Smarter Cambridgeshire Update and Investment Proposal. I think Andrew is going to present this.
Thank you, Chair, Assembly members. Hopefully you've had a chance to read the paper, and I have to confess again, I'm standing in for the person who wrote it, who is the technical expert, Noel Godfrey, the Programme Director of Connecting Cambridgeshire. So if there's jargon in it, you can blame me, but it wasn't my kind of authoring. So I will try and interpret for your benefit what the purpose of the report is. And I'm delighted to have Dan Clark, Noel's colleague, along to answer some of the more technical questions. So we'll do our best. So what this report is a two-pronged kind of thing. One, it's a very quick update on the progress that's been made since the Assembly and Board supported the establishment of this work stream back in July, August time. So it very briefly kind of gives you a flavour of some of the things that have been happening. And I think it's a very positive story. Your support and endorsement for this kind of approach has generated a lot of interest from the private sector, which is what we really wanted, and from the two universities, which is excellent to have support from across the piece there. And I think this kind of work stream in particular is an emphasis of the ABC of academic sector, business sector and councils coming together to kind of work in partnership on something where there's a lot of expertise residing in the Greater Cambridge area, and we need to kind of capitalise on that and make the most of it for the benefit of the City Deal objectives and the communities and businesses in the area. So it's great to have kind of got the thing kind of at least established and acknowledged, and to have had some interest and some media coverage and some a lot of contact I think Noel and Dan have had from private sector businesses interested to get involved. So that's all very positive. And there are other kind of workshops planned. The hack event mentioned under paragraph 6, third bullet, people who are interested in open data and understand what that is will be very excited about that. And the rest of us can kind of try and take away the fact that it's probably a good thing. But I'm told that is now happening on the 31st October at the junction with some sponsorship from the private sector as well. So that's all good. Another kind of example of things happening, getting going. Workshop on making a smart A14, which I'm sure will be lovely. And discussions as well with Abellio and others about kind of improving the way people kind of move around the station and so on and find their way through our city and wider area. And work continuing on a dynamic journey planner, which I suspect is probably an app type thing which will help people kind of plan their journeys and know what's going on in real time. So some of the things that you've started to kind of, say that you want as that will help us address some of the issues we're facing, work is happening and getting underway. And we've also been part of a collaborative bid for the Government Internet of Things funding, where the government has a £10 million pot, which it said one bid will win. And with the support of the LEP and others, we've submitted a bid which is in collaboration with Milton Keynes and Leeds and a number of private sector kind of supporters and others. So we think it's a strong bid, and we hope the government recognises and supports that, but if not, the process of putting it together has kind of brought people together and helped us identify ways of working together. So it's been a very positive kind of move, I think. So all of that has been happening and is ongoing. What we said when we brought the paper in I think it would have been July to the Assembly, was that there were kind of three elements of what we were trying to do in the short term and medium term. One is the development of strategy and vision, one is the development of tangible demonstrated projects. And one was the thing that attracted some comment about the jargon, which was around a smart technology architecture blueprint or something like that. And I'm learning myself some of what this means. So I think as the paper kind of sets out what that's really about and what we're now kind of asking for in principle, support for kind of a further investment of around £280,000 is to start putting in place the kind of technology that would allow, in due course, more of the kind of real world kind of apps and other kind of developments that will really start to make a difference to people. So you've got to get your foundations right first, and that's what this request for kind of in principle support for investment is about. So it's things like allowing the kind of systems that exist to kind of talk to each other. So as I understand it, the data is collected kind of in silos individually at the moment. What we really want is to create a space where the data can start to talk to each other, from which you can start to understand the way the city works better, and then you can start to understand and design solutions better. So it's that kind of creation of the data hub and the communication between devices that the Internet of Things is all about. So as I'm told, the different systems use the radio frequencies, but they don't kind of operate on a kind of consistent set of standards. So it's trying to kind of put in place a more coherent kind of approach to kind of sharing and gathering data that will allow things to happen. But the other kind of thing that the technology kind of platform will allow is more of that kind of real-time information sharing, so around transport kind of movements and kind of functions particularly, and more dynamic modelling, which I'm sure is also a very good thing, which again will kind of help people understand the way the city works and the way the kind of people are moving and so on. So all of the things that will enable us to kind of design interventions better and kind of take advantage of the way the world is moving, what it's all about. There's quite a kind of important point about being seen to be serious about this. So a lot of other cities are telling the government, telling investors that they are very smart and kind of are with it. And Cambridge, Greater Cambridge, hasn't really to date got its act together in kind of having a clear pitch on that. So what this work stream is largely about, and what the investment will allow us to say with some credibility, is that Cambridge is serious about this. We want to be a leading smart city. We want to kind of move into this kind of territory. We want to take advantage of the private sector expertise that resides around here and deploy it for the benefit of Greater Cambridge communities, businesses and so on. And not just let people in business around here design solutions in Singapore or elsewhere, but kind of help us and sort out our own backyard as well. So there's very much a strong strand of that. There's lots of places vying, therefore, for business investment and interest. Apparently there were 25 bids from across the country for the Internet of Things funding. So it's quite a competitive kind of market. So being able to send a signal that through this investment we are saying we are serious about it will enable us to have credibility with those businesses and investors, and will hopefully kind of gather in and really bridge in other kind of private sector capacity resources and so on. So that's part of why we're coming to this in principle funding at this stage, but not saying we'll spend any of it. What we're saying is we'll come back in the new year with a more detailed business case of exactly worked up detail what we want to do with money. So it's an in principles kind of commitment now, which allows us then to go to businesses and others and say, look, we know we've got this money coming, pretty much. It's worth you investing your time and effort with us, because there is some reality to this, and we've got the support of the Assembly and the board, and kind of people are keen to get on with this. So that's a large part of what we're about. So I think establishing our reputation, establishing our credibility, getting things moving, and in quite a quick and agile way, having a platform which allows things to happen. What we could do is take more time, do more thinking and research, and come back in due course and kind of go through the cycle and so on. But the sense that we've detected from the Assembly and Board to date and the wider community is people want us to get on with things and want to start seeing things delivered. So it's a relatively small kind of investment in the grand scheme of things. Other cities have thrown tens of millions of pounds at this, and what we wanted to do is kind of have something that's enough money to kind of get things going, but not to kind of over-invest into kind of any given technology, given that it's such a fast-moving world. You don't want to kind of put all your eggs in one basket and find it's the wrong basket in a couple of years' time. And I say that as a family that went down the Betamax route in the 1980s. My dad probably still very proudly has his Betamax video recorder sat somewhere gathering dust. And as myself, as somebody who invested very merrily in kind of CD recorder, I felt very proud of myself 15 years ago, and 2 years later it was obsolete. So I think we're wanting the Cambridge Greater City deal not to be the Betamax version of smart cities, but to kind of keep our options open by going for the more agile approach at this stage. I hope that's relatively plain English. As I say, I'm not exactly... Other points I was supposed to make were, yes, demonstrating our credentials, being competitive, being credible, starting to go and get the technical connectivity that allow things to talk to each other. It is highly complex, therefore we do need to kind of capitalise and use the university and private sector expertise, and we want to kind of work up the detail and come back, as I say, in the new year with a more polished product. But I hope that makes sense. Happy to try and deal with any questions.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I've got speakers, first Noel, then Roger, then Francis.
All right, thanks. All very exciting, and like you, it's all pretty new for me. One thing I was thinking about was that there must be fantastic employment opportunities in this initiative, and just looking at what Glasgow, Manchester and Birmingham has been achieving so far, is there any sense in the kind of type of skills that are needed and the possible growth of employment associated with this initiative. Looking ahead to what we have talked about, skill development, it seems to be a great opportunity here for having apprenticeships associated with this area as well. So I just thought I'd raise that as part of this exciting initiative, that there are the new employment opportunities, and whether there's any, as a quantity available now of what has happened or will happen.
Thank you. I'll take them in batches, I think makes better use of time. Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for clarity on this. When I first read this paper and I looked at the figure of 280,000, I thought, what on earth is that for? And then I started reading from section 7 onwards, 7, 8, 9, 10, and at the end of it I still didn't know what it was for, and I thought some lawyer had written this, to be honest. I like to think that I'm pretty savvy, but I honestly did not know what this was about, so thank you for more clarity on this. You're going to come back in the new year with more plans, etc. I mean, my big question was, is this something we're going to spend all in one go or in dribs and drabs? And it sounds like, from what you were saying, it's going to be more of a trickle feeding into ideas as they come along. Is that correct?
Thanks, Roger. And Francis.
Actually, I'm going to carry on the theme of Councillor Hickford, really about clarity. And it's really a plea for more detailed investment proposal, but also perhaps a plea to Graham and Tanya for future papers to be a bit more specific. I remember when we met back in the Guildhall in about March or April, we were asked to propose budgetary provision of tens of thousands of pounds, and when, after a bit of question, what we actually understood was we were being asked to recruit people. If we could have that sort of stuff when we're spending public money put in that plain language, I think what you said is that you're going to possibly buy servers and computer kit and radio receivers rather than employ consultants to write reports or to take on more staff. But if I make a plea that when we get asked these early stage papers, it's much more clear, rather like Councillor Hickford was saying, what our public money that we are improving in principle is actually going on.
Thanks, Francis. Yeah, I was going to ask the same question too. So you have that 3 times up.
Yeah, an entirely fair point. And we did discuss, well, should we hold off till we've got all the detail? And I think there's always a balance between kind of, do you wait until you've got perfect detail, or do you kind of try and get moving in the first instance? And I think I tried to explain in the introduction, which perhaps didn't come across the paper, having an indication that you're supportive of this kind of direction of travel and some money in principle makes us more credible for other people who want to come and work with, and then we can come back and get your kind of definitive agreement once we've got the list of detail. So I asked Noelle, I said, please, please, please give me something tangible that I can take into the meeting. And she said, well, I could give you stuff, but I wouldn't know it was definitely the right thing. So rather than kind of mislead you into kind of saying, well, it's definitely this, it's definitely that, we try to give an indication of the sorts of things. And I think you're right, Francis, it's not about employing people. There's no intention to kind of take on extra people into the team with this money. It is more about kind of technology solutions and things that make it possible for others to kind of go on and take this forward in due course. So it is a fast-moving world. It's quite difficult to grasp. It's not like I can tell you it's going to be a road or it's a bicycle lane or something we all know and can hold and touch and love. It's kind of stuff that's kind of more in the internet and in that kind of digital world, which it's not always easy to get your head around. But I think the outcomes we're looking for are kind of better connectivity of systems so that you get a more smarter way of kind of moving transport around, moving people around, people understanding what's going on in the city, environmental kind of stuff and so on. So it's kind of, I think, entirely consistent with the City Deal objectives. And I absolutely hear very loudly your request for clarity about what public money is doing. I think that's entirely fair and reasonable. That's why we're only asking in principle. We're not asking, give us the money, we'll go away and play with it. And we're saying, give us the money in principle now, we'll kind of come back with some more deliberate things. On Noel's point about skills and so on, I think that's a very excellent kind of point to make. Cambridge is lucky to be rich in human capital in these kind of fields, but you've always got to have an eye on the future generations, and the skills strand of the City Deal is all about making it possible for local young people to engage in the kind of Cambridge cluster, the Cambridge phenomenon. And I don't have a specific answer as to kind of how that will play out in this. But I would hope that companies in those sectors will feel able to take on apprentices and so on. I don't know whether Claire would have more insight into kind of the skills gaps that might exist in this kind of sector, or how we're going about recruiting people and developing those skills. But I think it would be neat, wouldn't it, to kind of marry up the two agendas, and I think that's an entirely fair point. I don't have a number, I'm sorry, but did that cover most of the question? Do you want to add anything down? Or kind of
Roger wanted to come back with a supplementary, and then Dave.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Yes, it has covered it, but it seems to me that, yes, we want to put money aside and we kind of know what it's for, but we don't know exactly what it's for. Is that right? Yeah. Then my question would be, how do we come up with a figure of 280,000 if we don't know what it's for? If we're going to be serious, why not 28 million? And if we're not going to be serious and just play about, why not £28? Why 280,000?
That's the point where my knowledge kind of evaporates, and kind of if Noelle were here, she would have some better answers to kind of how she came up with the figure. I assume she must have had some conversations with some people that have given her a sense of, if you want a data hub type thing, it's going to cost you a certain amount of money, and it's that order of magnitude, rather than coming and saying, give us 2 or 3 million to kind of mess around with. I think the point I'm trying to make as well is trying to do it in a kind of relatively agile way that kind of allows us to be flexible and fluid. We're not over-investing in something, but we've got enough. So when we came forward with the initial, can we have £20,000, I think people kind of said, well, are you sure? Are you serious? That doesn't seem a lot of money. This, I think, is based on conversations she has been having, which Dan can perhaps give a further kind of detail on. And I didn't answer your original question, is it a trickle or is it a big bang? It's not a big bang. It's a kind of significant enough bang to get interest, but it's not us trying to splurge public money on kind of fanciful stuff. It's trying to be kind of pragmatic.
Come back in a minute. Dave?
Yeah, in more tangible things, when I'm in London, I can get an app which tells me when my next bus is coming. Is this the sort of thing that you're talking about?
Yeah, it is. We're doing some work with the computer labs at the moment, looking at modelling bus arrival times so that we can get a more accurate prediction of when your bus is going to arrive and what your journey time will be, so that you'll know exactly how long it's likely to take you. We have real-time passenger information at the moment, but we know that it could be more accurate, so that's what we're looking at, how we can do that.
Can I just check? Would that be in the form of an app that I can have on my phone?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Just one last bit of clarity. Is this 280,000 on top of the 20,000? So it's actually 300,000, and that's what's going to come back with a good business plan, etc. To spend some of. Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's my expectation, yes.
Okay, so lots of clarification there, and a chance to see more detail before it's committed. It ought to take us to the recommendations now, so that is indeed saying that this support is in principle, so it's consistent with what's been said. Are we agreed on those recommendations? Thank you. We then go to the item which is called 6D, which is the financial monitoring report, which Roger will share.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So, yes, 6D, quarterly 2 financial monitoring report. Chris, is that yourself? Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This is the, as you say, is the report for the period ending September. It was brought together in fairly some degree of haste, given the timing of this meeting, which is closely or close to the end of that quarter end period. That's no excuse, but I will start with an apology, Chairman, that there is actually an error in the table on 422. Compared to if you compare that to the analysis on the detail of the capital programme, there is a slight error around city centre capacity improvements, which unfortunately there was an amendment made to the financial table at the back, which wasn't then reflected in the covering report. So a slight apology to that. It doesn't change the underlying position, financial position for that period, but there is a slight error between those two issues. The report sets out in very sort of simple terms the expenditure to date, both on the capital programme or the individual programme costs and the non-programme costs, which are summarised in 4.3.2. There has been some significant movement in spend in the month compared to the last month, both from the programme perspective and from the non-programme costs, which does demonstrate that we're starting to get the ball rolling, but there's a fair degree of momentum and catch-up still to be achieved. The programme, as shown in the report, is currently, and we have corrected one of the areas that was highlighted at the last meeting, that the Appendix 1, in terms of the programme cost, has now does reflect both the cumulative for the budget and cumulative for actuals, which wasn't reflected in the last report. So as members of the Assembly can see, as at the end of September, we had a budget of just under £800,000, and to date we have spent just in excess of £600,000. The non-programme costs, in a similar manner, we're starting to see some incurrence of expenditure in relation to these activities for the budget that was agreed for the financial year. Tanya is now in post, although has no costs yet shown in this profile, because we don't pay till the end of the month. So that will all be reflected, and I'm sure there'll be a significant drain on that particular budget when we start seeing Tanya's costs come through. But more seriously, Chairman, that we have tried to do a very simple profile of known instances of expenditure in the non-programme costs. Any underspend in the year will be taken into the resource pool that we talked about at the last month, and the utilisation of that will be considered in detail as we get towards creating a detailed budget for 2016-17. But I'm happy to take any questions associated with the capital or non-programme costs.
Okay, thank you. I think everyone's ears pricked up when you said someone's getting paid. I thought we were all doing this for the love of it, but I'll hand it back to the Chairman now. Some questions, it's just a note report.
Okay, so there is a question now. Maurice, then Francis, then.
Not a question, Chairman, but just we were very critical last month of the report, and just to say this is much clearer this month, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Francis?
And again, I'm just noting, can I just, so I understand, 4.2 capital is effectively coming from city deal money, if I'm right, and 4.3 revenue is effectively coming from New Homes bonus from the three councils. That's the distinction. When you said underspend on revenue, I'm trying to pick up my ears on what you were saying, would be carried forward or considered in the future. There's an alternative, presumably, which is just the three councils, as it were, get it back. Because it's our New Homes bonus that we're speaking as a South Cambridgeshire, it's our New Homes bonus we allocated for the year. It's underspent in the year. Do we not get it back, as it were?
Chairman, obviously that's the discretion of both the board and the respective authorities that have contributed to that. We did set aside the New Homes bonus for 15-16, which is in excess of the significant excess of the budget that's actually set out in relation to these non-operational costs, without any decision on the utilisation of that element, which is over and above the sums that you see in front of you today. So there is a significant pot which was highlighted in the last report, which is yet to be allocated. And if you recall, the last report did highlight the ongoing commitments over the first phase of the city deal, and even taking those into account, I think that the figure unallocated, ignoring potential underspend in the current year, is around £2.2 million. So there is a resource to be determined what that is used for. As you quite like to say, Councillor Clark, that could either be used for enhancing something to deliver the objectives of the City Deal programme, or it could be returned to the host authority.
Or presumably it could give rise to a non-requirement for future annual contributions.
Correct.
Are there any other questions? I had one, Chris, which I'm suppose I'm seizing the opportunity of this being a financial monitoring report. And it did occur to me after we were reviewing your report to our previous meeting that would be very helpful if there was a way of understanding the anticipated flow of Section 106 funding to the capital side of our programme, because I think it was always the case that the money we received from the government would be complementing money that we received through developer contributions. And I absolutely understand that the forward view of that isn't a perfect one by any manner of means. It may not go very far, but to understand what the City Deal is committing to in terms of capital spending only in relation to the government money for the first wave is kind of an incomplete view. So I just wonder if in the future there is any means of sort of animating for us what else we need to be thinking about receiving.
Thank you for that comment, Jenny, and you're absolutely spot on. I mean, as you recall, we have approved an overarching programme of £180 million against a funding stream of £100 million in the knowledge that A, some of that wouldn't be delivered in a 5-year period, but also that there would be, the City Deal money would be supplemented by other more local funding, not the New Homes bonus, but as you say, Section 106 monies and transport related monies. As part of the ongoing, or the budget for 16-17 and beyond for the next 5 years, I'm working with council colleagues and Tanya now in her new role to develop a more detailed programme of the total construction cost programme plus the funding elements of that. Where at the moment, as you say, we've already highlighted is a programme which is being funded for 15-16 completely from City Deal money, but for 16-17 onwards, for the next 4 years of the programme, you will have a more detailed analysis of the gross cost and the income associated with that, which includes Section 106 money.
Thank you. And Tanya, I think you wanted to add something.
Really just to suggest that where there's in principle agreement to Section 106 contributions, those would probably be the best ones to capture, having previously worked on planning and Section 106. So for example, where the City Council Planning Committee has agreed in principle a Section 106 for some station road developments in CB1, those contributions, the Chisholm Trail and potentially other schemes could be captured, and if negotiations on Camborne West include some match funding for A48, then maybe that could be.
So the commitment is to show us something from the next financial year forward, is it?
It will be part of a more detailed budget proposal leading into 16-17.
Thank you. So I think we can go to whatever we have to do with your report, which is to note it. We agree? Thank you. Now we are at 6E, which is 6 monthly report on housing. And Alan Carter from the City Council is going to. Alan Carter and Liz Bissett. And just to say, we have the report that was originally circulated and the supplementary report that was sent to us in the last couple of days.
Thank you, Chair. So a few words of introduction. The National Housing Planning and Welfare Policy agenda is changing rapidly, and hence I was asked to draft a supplementary paper to my original one. And it's the nature of these things that sometimes things change again almost by the time the ink's dry, and there's been further announcements today that some of you will be aware of, and that's the environment that I guess housing is working within at the moment. And so I've tried to draft the progress report in that context, and trying to reflect the fact that the Housing Development Agency will have to continue to work in that changing context. I think there's probably just two things perhaps that I'd highlight. One from the original report, page 47, the table under item 12. What I've tried to reflect there, that, as we said last time, fortunately we're not setting off from a standing start with the Housing Development Agency, and both the City Council and South Cambs have existing programmes and have commitments, and that table tries to set out a take on the current commitments. And in item 13 below, very mindful of the fact that our key target is to deliver 1,000 additional homes under the City Deal process to guarantee, or to as part of the deal, to get additional tranches of transport money. I've tried to interpret how many of those commitments could reasonably be classed as additional homes, and under paragraph 14 also how many of the schemes that we've identified in the next pipeline, and how many of those homes could be reasonably labelled as additional homes towards that 1,000 unit target. And the second thing I just wanted to highlight, that in the supplementary paper, that in terms of implementation, we are moving forward, and that the senior officer group met 30th of September and have started to map out a way forward from where we're at the moment with existing commitments and the existing staff teams, to merge and to move forward with a single Housing Development Agency staff team that will take us forward into the next couple of years. And that officer group felt that despite all of the changes, there was enough business, as we saw it at the moment, to cover the next 2 or 3 years, and therefore it was worth continuing with this project.
Thanks very much. Liz, do you want to add something?
Yes, I do, and it really relates also to the previous report, where you'll see that we haven't yet spent any of the funding that's provided through City Deal, and that's because we did, with all the changes that are taking place in housing, with the current proposals that are going through different legislative processes, we wanted to be confident that actually we had a strong programme going forward. And I think Alan's probably being modest when he says 2 to 3 years, because actually I think we're reasonably confident over 3 to 5 years that there is quite a significant programme there, and that can be built over the medium term. So we did pause as senior officers to ensure that the proposal that we first brought here was still deliverable in terms of the outcomes that City Deal is looking for. And we're now very confident in making that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think a lot of us are very disappointed by the situation we're now in with this, but the key question for us as an assembly is, are we still convinced by the original proposal? Does it have the critical mass still to justify? Did I pick up correctly from I was just trying to sort of match up the 2 papers we have here. Is it right that from the first paper you were expecting to have moved people into the agency sooner than it appears from the second paper, when it's talking about only by the end of 2016? And is that sort of extended timescale kind of just to be sure about these various changes and their impact?
So we expect what I think Alan's called in his paper a soft launch, so to be working collaboratively really from now, but to move to a formalised structure, which I'd expect, because we have to go through a consultation process, to make the formal switch in April of next year. It may be sooner than that, but it won't be any later than that in terms of the consultation with the staff currently affected within different authorities and so on. So a long stop of April next year.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks to Alan for the original report and, of course, the supplementary report. because this housing is a particular movable feast. Alan has outlined some of the basics within the supplementary report about the authorities having to reduce rents by 1% a year from April next year for the following 4 years. What it doesn't spell out here is entirely what that means for both district authorities. A loss of a large amount of income, which the result of which is our inability to build social homes beyond that to which we're already committed somewhere, certainly became City Council sometime in 2017. And you can see from the report that, you know, over the 30-year business plan of the City Council, we could end up with some £156 million hole in our budget, and slightly less, but no less significant for South Cambs of around about 135 million. We've got to make some immediate savings. That, coupled with the extension of right to buy to housing association tenants, will, and us as authorities having to sell when up for re-let many of our so-called high-value properties. We, as a City Council, estimate that to be around about 25%, potentially 25% of our stock. Shelter, in a report recently, estimated it to be 46%. And I think the thing is, nobody actually knows yet what those figures will be, but they are quite concerning. We think we will end up having to sell all our 1- and 2-bedroom homes, the very homes that are most needed by people on the housing needs register. So there's a lot of not good news in terms of our ability as authorities to build social housing, certainly, in the future. And indeed, since Alan's written this report, as he said, there are further developments, which, you know, I'm thinking that the government putting the final nail in the coffin of the of social housing by removing the potential for affordable housing on when planning applications come forward. Those that affordable housing will not be there in the way it is now for rent, but they're going to have to be for sale, and not taking any account of course, of housing for those people who can't afford to buy houses, and in particular in a place like Cambridge, where we're talking of, you know, really, really high value properties. You know, one's chances of getting on a social home are diminishing. The people already waiting for social housing are going to wait longer as we have fewer homes for them to move into. I mean, I'm pleased to see in the report that the Officer Board would welcome the establishment of a member reference group. I welcome that too, because, you know, I didn't want to see this just be officers without the oversight of members. I think I've done extremely well there, Chair, by not going into rant mode, which I kept feeling I might do, being entirely disappointed with what's happening in housing, trying to pick out positives, and for me the positive is member reference group on the board. But we will see. Who, you know, things may well change. I can't see it at the moment, but I, you know, hope at some point that social housing comes back onto the agenda somehow, and it will improve the situation in the city and indeed in South Cambs.
It is indeed a pretty task if a member reference group is the the only crumbs on the table, really. Thanks, Kevin. Bridget?
Thank you. Right, well, I had a moan about the paper we saw six months ago, and I'm afraid, Alan, sorry, I'm going to do it again. 6-month report, 3 sides of A4, takes opaqueness to a new level as far as I'm concerned. We're told that meetings have taken place. We haven't been told what those meetings have discussed or what conclusions they've come to. We have a lot of grammatical errors as well, which is disappointing. We're told that the City Deal, for City Deal purposes, approximately 150 commitments could be defined as contributing towards the 1,000 additional homes. But no, I'd be really interested within a paper like this to know how those figures are derived. You know, what does lead you to reasonably define them as such? The paragraph that I want to pick up on, though, is paragraph 15. So we've got the table in 12, which identifies 16 schemes. 14 tells us, paragraph 14 tells us another 14 around. And then we have a paragraph that says there is a longer list of potential sites, I presume there should be an of in there, not counted in the above, including several county sites in South Cambs, and further discussions are ongoing regarding further sites. Initial conversations have been had with representatives from both Cambridge University and Bursars, and a first scheme opportunity is under discussion. So there's actually, you know, what is that saying? I think that's probably really, really important. But there's 4 lines and no explanation about what actually is it telling us. So I'm going to be asking for a briefing from an officer actually to go through this document, because I think there's stuff there that I need to know about, which is not obvious in the way this is being presented. So I really think a 6-monthly report needs a heck of a lot of more meat to it than we have here. Apologies for being grumpy.
I just feel I ought to apologise for if that's the... I suppose, absolutely for the grammar. As part of my defence has been through several scrutinies from various other officers as well, so it's a shame that some of those weren't picked up. I suppose as well, the other thing I would say is that I'm very conscious this is an evolving and an emerging process. I'm not sure whether we have an opportunity to provide 6 months progress reports on anything else. So it might be over time we'll be able to set a standard, and we'll get an expectation from you to group as what you are expecting within these types of papers. Very happy to provide a briefing, officer.
I mean, it's just that, you know, I'm interested, and you're not giving me anything here which will satisfy my interest. I want to know how it's going. I want to know about the staffing and what the triggers of the staffing and what it's going to be. I want to know where these sites are. I want to know about the conversations you're having with the university and with bursars. You know, this is interesting stuff, which is probably, you know, very relevant, and you're not telling me about it.
So, I think the problem here is, as I can understand it, that you've written the report to address a specific issue about is there the critical mass of likely funded housing schemes to put through the Housing Development Agency, and you've written the report really around that as a question, and I personally think it does answer that question, but the problem is that it's opened out other things which you might think members understand and know about, and in fact they don't. So I don't know whether you can make any suggestion about how we can sort of fill that void in a different way, perhaps.
Well, we welcome a member reference group, so that might be one way of filling that void.
I was going to make a second point, and then perhaps bring some the next time we report back, take on board the points that you just made about unpacking some of the stuff here that's just, you know, just proceed really, but doesn't tell you the detail.
Kevin?
Yeah, just briefly, Chair. Whilst I accept sort of certain criticisms about maybe a lack of information, you know, I don't think reports are written as an English exam, and I don't think we, you know, need to get overexcited about, you know, the word "of" missing in a line or the odd comma and stuff. Sort of those pedantic points, I think, not necessarily. Yeah, not standards. It's just pedantism.
Okay, thank you. Could I just ask the officers, or anyone really, the member reference group is to be constituted from where?
I think we're anticipating, because it's a partnership between the county, the city and South Cambridgeshire, one from each. I think that's what we haven't put any detail in here, but that's the usual structure. It would be a representative from each of the authorities who are part of what's effectively a shared service or a partnership.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily then answer the question that Bridget was raising about the void in understanding what's behind these numbers.
No, and I think we'd have to take that on board the next time we brought a report back here.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other points, let's do what we're invited to do here and note the report. Is everyone agreed to do that? Duly noted. Thank you. So back to the agenda, and we then have the item 7, the City Deal forward plan, which is appended. I don't know if that does generate any need to discuss. Clearly, that's the executive board's forward plan, which then shapes our agenda, in each case a few weeks before the date's given. Roger?
Thank you, Chairman. I noted, and I mentioned it earlier, that the A13007 corridor to include bus priority, etc., has been moved from December to January. It would be very helpful if changes were actually highlighted so we knew what had changed on here from one meeting to another.
Thanks, Stan. That's a very good point. Tanya? Tanya's noted that. I think the problem that people have been wrestling with is the number of different work streams and the speed at which they're moving. But if we could have that more transparent, it would be good. Okay, well, I think that's the end of our meeting today. So thank you very much indeed, everyone. And we'll be back here when? Tomorrow. Not tomorrow. We'll be back somewhere on the 13th of November. Thank you very much.